Thank you. It's such an honor to be here today. So I appreciate so much that Mercy and Me, Mount St. Mary Academy asked me to be here. It's really an honor and a privilege to be standing here before you. I'm really happy that I have my family here all the way from Texas to be a part of this day with me, as well as my kids and some wonderful, amazing friends that are like family to me. But when it came to my story, there were so many topics that I could delve into to depict my life, but I chose to talk about something that I feel like is the epitome of who I am and the reason that I'm standing here, and that's love. And I don't mean falling in love, the love that we see every day on the commercials and how it's so overly inflated. The love I mean is the true love of loving yourself. And when I really think about it, it was so designed by God for us to be loved. And we desire it, we seek it out. And we need it to be a part of us because that's who God designed us to be. And so that is who I am. And it is because of love. Now, I did want to ask, did anyone notice the mirror outside? Okay. The mirror was strategically placed there for a reason, and that is why you have the mirrors at your table, because the mirror is a very important part of the message today. The mirror has always been synonymous with beauty, with confidence, and even love when you think about it. And that is why I wanted to incorporate it into this message, because this inanimate object has so much power and so much control. And it seems like we can do nothing without checking our reflections in that mirror every day. We seek for it to give us that last little sense of approval before we go out into our day. And so I want to step over for a minute. And do you remember the story of Snow White? Of course. There was the Wicked Witch. And as I read, she was a beautiful, powerful woman. Here she is, she's queen. But her infamous line was when she stepped to the mirror and it's, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And in that one moment, this queen, this powerful woman, is vulnerable in her vanity. She's needing that mirror to give her that sense of value, that sense of being something, that worth. And I know that it's just a fairy tale, but when you think about it, how many times do we all do that? We're stepping to that mirror and we're seeking to feel that value, that worth. Because I can imagine that her life was perfectly fine until one day the mirror replied, "But there is another." Now, in reality, there are no poison apples and to rid us of all of those insecurities. But in reality, we do. We stand there before that mirror and we give it that power over us to validate us, to somehow say to us, to me, to you, I have value. We desire and seek that truth from the mirror. And it has this little special hold over us that we don't always want to admit, but it's absolutely true. One of my favorite quotes is, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." And for me, that always meant, regardless of what anyone had to say, I was in control of how I received what was said, how I responded to what was said, and how I reacted, because my reaction is what would always propel me to the next level. And as I said, honestly, there is no doubt that love is the reason I'm standing here. And I think about it whenever I hear my bio and I hear someone introduce me, I always see the 6-year-old version of myself. I see the little girl that was not supposed to be an inkling of who I am standing here today. And for a moment, I'm going to share my story. I am from a very small town right outside of Texarkana, Douglasville, Texas, 171 people. You blink, you miss it. There's one four-way stop, and it's been like that forever. I was one of 6 children. My dad was a minister, and I always said my mom should have been, because I never met anyone with the remarkable faith that she had. She always demanded that I'd never settle for being anything that I was expected to be. I always had to strive. We always had to strive to be so much more. But my life, I feel like, truly began a couple of days before, I think it was a day before Thanksgiving. I was 2 years old, and there was, my sister and I, she was 6, we were standing next to a heater, and it exploded. And it engulfed the room. But that morning, my mom said I had gotten up, and apparently I was a little fashionista even then too, and I had dressed myself. And I put on this little coat, and it was like a little hood, and I had the shoes, everything. So apparently, I thought I was all that then too. So, but my mom came into the house with a garden hose, a regular garden hose, to save her little girls. That was the love, that was the power, that was the strength that my mom had. And 5 days later, my sister, she succumbed to smoke inhalation, and she passed away. And of course, I survived, but I had third-degree burns to my face and hands. But the thing is, because I was so fashionable, the fire only burned what was exposed, which was my face and my hands. So I always jokingly say that fashion is my destiny because fashion saved my life. We were flown to San Antonio, which there was a military hospital. And there, I always think about, now that I have 2 kids of my own, the power and the magnitude and the faith and the strength that my mom actually had to stand there and hear someone tell her, you have one child that's gone, and you have another that is basically beyond repair, because they told her she probably won't have a good quality of life because of the fact that, her hands are burned so severely, and the scarring and all those things that he's just started to speak. But you would have to know my mother. She was about 5'9", 5'10", and she was so matter of fact. And I get goosebumps when I think about what she said. She said, I looked him dead in his face, and I told him, you don't know the God I serve. And I can imagine that it was in that moment that she decided that I was going to be everything that she felt I could be, everything that she knew God wanted me to be. And in that moment, her love and her faith went to a whole nother level. So I don't know, I sometimes get choked up thinking about my mom and how amazing she was and how she always inspired me. Like I said, demanded is a better word, because she demanded that I be nothing less. I had a lot of surgeries and missing school and all those things, but my mom was always right there, and since I can remember, she was saying, you can do anything anyone else can do. You're no different than anyone else, and that's it, the bottom line. And so I remember how she would put these little things on the floor, and she'd tell me to pick them up, and she'd turn her back. I didn't find out until I was probably an adult. She said, I turned my back because I didn't want you to see me tear up, because I really wanted to help you, but I needed you to gain your independence. And she always did things like that. And I remember one day she walked in the house with a box, and it was an organ in it. And I said, what am I supposed to do with that? I can't play an organ because I don't have any fingers. And she whipped her head around, and she looked at me, and she said, don't you ever tell me what you cannot do. She said, you may not do it the way everyone else is going to do it, but you figure it out, and you're going to do it your way. Now, needless to say, before long, I was playing Mary Had a Little Lamb on top of Old Smoky. Whatever was in that organ book, I figured out how to play it. So, and that was the thing. Part of recovery was doing those little things with my hands to learn how to get the mobility back. And so I started sewing with the needle and thread. I don't even know what she sewed. It wasn't her trade, but I would watch her sew. So I started sewing with this needle and thread, and she saw me. She bought a little red sewing machine, and oh my God, the rest was history. I had the best dressed Barbie in town, and yes, I did torture my siblings. I won't share the whole story because he's sitting here, but I did torture them into being models and, doing the runway show. And but I mean, that's just how she was. She empowered me to go above and beyond, and she saw that gift in me, and she fueled it. And by the time I went to school, I was so empowered that I remember walking into that school thinking I was no different than anyone else. I didn't see the scars. I didn't see the differences. I didn't see any of that. All I knew was Mama said I could do all things. And so that's what I did. If they were jumping rope, I was jumping rope, because living on the farm, whatever my brothers and sisters did, I had to do. If they were shelling peas, guess what, baby girl? You're shelling peas today. So there were no limitations when it came to her. But I wish I could tell you, though, that all that confidence and all those things that she was putting in me, that it stuck, and I never wavered from it. But I did, because eventually you're older, and you're in this world where beauty is everything, and image, and I'm wanting to be in this industry, the beauty industry of fashion, where that's what it's all about, is your image. And so being in that world with such big aspirations and not having the outer to fit this world, that's pretty hard. But my mom said, God has a purpose for you. And that purpose was, regardless of those adversities, regardless of those fears, regardless of those doubts, you're going to do what you have to do, because she used to always say, can't is not an option. And so that always stayed in the back of my mind. So when those adversities came up, when I was tested, when I was doubted, I pushed 100%. And then I pushed 200%, because can't was not an option. And my determination to do all these things, next thing you know, I'm the star athlete on the track team at my high school, and anchoring the relays, never dropping the stick in my entire career. So much so that the University of Central Arkansas signed me. Next thing I know, I'm 22 years old and a buyer for Belk, head buyer at that. And then I'm working at Macy's and IBM and all these amazing places, and I'm still in the back of my mind, can is not an option. Yes, it was hard, but because of what was instilled in me, I knew I was unbreakable. So I had to keep pushing, and I had to keep going. But here's the thing. One day, I realized something, and I don't know when it was that aha moment or anything, but one day I realized I've done all these remarkable things. And I'm now a mother, and I'd had my first child, and I realized I'm not truly as strong on the inside as I am on the outside. And I think it was because I had never truly accepted me and all the flaws, and I had never truly accepted that flawed person staring back at me. One of my other favorite quotes is by Oprah, and she said that real self-esteem is defining the world by your own terms and refusing to abide by the judgment of others. Refusing to abide by the judgment of others. That meant I had to rediscover that 6-year-old girl that walked into school with hundreds of people, that face didn't look like mine, hands didn't look like mine. And I had the smile and the confidence that could relinquish the power of anything anyone had to say that day. I didn't care. So refusing to abide by the judgment of others meant I had to rechannel the strength of that mere 6-year-old girl. Because here I am doing all these things, and I carried this strength my entire life. But I missed the most important message of all that my mother was trying to get me to understand, and that was acceptance. And what is one of the most key elements of love? It is acceptance. And what I mean by that, you think about it, whether you're a parent or you have a spouse or sibling, anyone in your life, when you truly love that person, you accept their flaws. You accept them for who they are, their mistakes, whatever the case may be, you're accepting of it, and you love them regardless. And that's what my mom did for me, because this story could be so different, because I can't tell you how many kids I saw where the mother or the father, they couldn't handle what their child was about to go through, and they actually abandoned them. So I saw that. So my story could be so much different if my mother did not have that love. But imagine having that love for yourself. You would truly possess the ability to define the world at your own terms and refuse to abide by the judgment of others. And me refusing to abide by the judgment of others, that meant I could finally walk to that mirror and I love the flawed person that was staring back at me, because I am divinely flawed. I could look in that mirror and realize that these unusual hands, God gave an incredible gift. And that was truly an aha moment, because I can look in the mirror and I value myself because I know I am valuable. I'm beautiful beyond my scars, and I never doubt it, because the confidence of that little 6-year-old girl and my mother's voice, it reigns in my head every day, and it has made me who I am. Unearthing and unleashing that insight into my life with the passion and the drive that I already had, that's made me who I am standing here today. I've dressed celebrities, star athletes, singers. My clothing has been at the Golden Globes, Stars, BET. I could go on and on, but what people don't realize is everything, no matter if it's a New York Fashion Week, wherever it is, it's sewn by my hands. My gift is in those threads. And how amazing is it that my name is in the lights with Donna Karan, Versace, and all these names that I grew up admiring? Me. So, yes, I am that person today because of love. And I'm grateful standing here, but not because of those accolades, but because of the remarkable woman that was in my life, that taught me to have faith and to be instilled with strength and the power to love myself. And not every person is blessed to have a woman like that in their lives. And that's why I founded the Designing Hope Foundation, because I wanted to be able to dedicate my life to empowering. It started out burn survivors, but I want to dedicate my life to empowering others. And one of the other stories that I truly love about a mom telling me was the story of a soldier when I first went to the hospital. She said there was a guy there, he had both legs amputated, and he would sit in the wheelchair. She said he never spoke, he never said a word. And she said, so one day you slid down out of my lap, and mind you, my face is bandaged, my hands are bandaged, and she said I walked over to him, and I started rocking back and forth, singing Joy to the World. And she said his face lit up. And she said from that day forward, he was a different person. And she said, that is who you are. And of course, when I was a kid, it didn't really resonate how or what she was saying to me. But she said, that is who you are. And I don't want you to ever lose that. So I try, and I hope that I'm doing it, but I finally feel like I'm walking in my purpose. And I hope that she's smiling down with approval, because it's always been my goal to share her light, her light of love. And it's just an honor to have known her and the amazing things that she's done. But before I close out, I want to leave you with a challenge. My challenge to you is, as you leave the room and you pass the mirror, or when you ever look in any mirror, that you allow yourselves to see beyond who you think you should be in order to be acceptable. From this day forward, open yourselves to the possibility of being able to define the world by your own terms and refuse to abide by the judgment of others. I hope that when you leave this room, you never see your reflection again the same, that you seek with such ferocity for the ability to stand before your own mirror in those most vulnerable moments and truly be able to love the person staring back at you. Not if I do this, not when I do this, not when I lose 5 pounds, none of that. But to be able to look in the mirror and truly love that reflection that's staring back at you, just the way you are. Thank you so much for having me here today.